everybody. Welcome to this episode of Rush Deep Dive. Today we are talking about 1984's Grace Under Pressure. So, as we always do, reading from, or talking about the album art first, but we're going to read briefly here from Hugh Symes' Art of Rush. So, Grace Under Pressure. The album title is about us as a band trying to maintain grace under pressure, says Getty. That was a very dark time. There was something cold about that experience, admits Alex. It was very difficult to make that record. We didn't have the confidence in the producer we were working with at the time, and it's reflected in the coldness of that jacket. That cover looks cold and far away. We felt like that at times when we were making it. The songs on Grace Under Pressure aren't exactly warm and fuzzy either. Neil's lyrics were written at a time when the Cold War became downright icy. On September 1st, 1983, Korean Airlines Flight 007 from New York to Seoul was shot down by a Soviet Su-15 fighter plane. 25 days later, the Soviet Union's early warning system erroneously reported the launch of long-range Minuteman missiles from America. It did so twice that day. If the duty officer at the Soviet Command Center hadn't judged the reports as false alarms, planet Earth might still be enduring a nuclear winter. Hugh envisioned a picture of an egg caught in the maw of a metal vise. Deborah Samuel, the photographer, recalls the degree of caution required to apply just the right amount of pressure to hold the unperturbed egg in a clamp. A very messy shoot. The result was a strong image, but not quite cover-worthy. Nonetheless, it ended up inside the album and was also prominently featured in the subsequent tour book. As Hugh cast about for ideas, he latched onto the inherent dichotomy in the album title. I remember we had discussions about the title, says Neil. Hugh took it literally. He was going to put Grace under pressure. Grace, denoted by the small letter G at the right side of the frame, was symbolized by a vast body of water, serene and mostly untroubled. Pressure, denoted by the small letter P above the G, was represented by roiling and mottled purple clouds. Above the mountainous storm front, the painting becomes increasingly abstract and unsettling. A series of striations, seemingly clawed onto the canvas by a palette knife, draw one's attention to a small eye gazing out from the center of the crushing atmosphere. That detail was inspired by Marshall Ehresmann, whose paintings of deformed and demonic figures in the tradition of Francis Bacon's grotesque portraits have been displayed on the cover of Time magazine, as well as Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho. I remember discussing these things over the phone with Hugh, the beastly eye, the palette knife technique, etc., adds Neil. He described this to me element by element. Neil felt the cover needed a bit of humanity, so I added in a human element, says Hugh. Well, almost human. The figure adorning the cover is inspired by The Body Electric, a song about a self-aware android on the run. Yet the bald figure was never supposed to look quite as pallid as he does. The album cover is suffused in a nearly monochromatic ice blue, which is a far cry from the palette of colors Hugh incorporated in his 40 by 40 painting. On the original canvas, there are lavender hues in the water, and the darker clouds include a variety of warmer tones. To this day, all three band members still love the Grace Under Pressure artwork. So what do we think about the cover? I think this is one of my favorite Rush album covers. It may be my favorite Rush album cover. I think this is so well done. There's so yes, why Tim holds that up. What Tim is holding up is actually Hugh's original, as I mentioned in the reading here from Hugh's book. That's got the kind of monochromatic blues in it. This was his 40 by 40 painting, which later came to be actually what's on the album cover. So yeah, there's basically two iterations of it, and that's kind of what the difference is. But I just love the fact that, you've got the eye in there. I didn't read it from the book, but there's actually like a jawline with teeth right here. And that's taken, Hugh took inspiration from a trip to the dentist when he was 9 years old. um, with that, and then there's a piece here, the centerpiece, which many claim is, I guess rubble from parts of the Soviet like fighter planes, or perhaps something that that was shot down during the Cold War. But what a
I don't
master.
think I ever noticed the teeth before, to be quite honest, until just now.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Right up there near the top.
Yeah.
Little jawline.
That was a long time. It was many years before I noticed the eye.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the mannequin too. Like I assume they probably just used a mannequin for the Android, the Android piece, but
Yeah, it's tough to find good androids that are willing to pose for album covers.
this is true.
They don't come cheap.
No, they don't.
This is true. Any other thoughts? Oh, you know
Reminds
what?
me, if anybody's a Star Trek fan, it reminds me of I can't remember her name in the movie, but Persis Kambata was her name. She's since passed away, but she was in the Star Trek the motion picture, the first Star Trek movie. That's what that image reminds me of, because she was bald.
Okay. Love that. I just showed the. Oh, sorry, John. I was just saying, I love the art on the record too. I just held that up. It's pretty sweet.
I think too, this is proof that Rush never mailed anything in. I mean, look at all the work went into an album cover. A lot of bands just put an album cover out there that looks cool, but they actually put thought into this. Like, how can this album cover reflect the common thread of the songs? And I think that shows that this is a band that never mailed anything in, no filler. I mean, and that's why their album covers are so awesome, because they really do link with the music, and it's so cool they get able to do that.
And this is in red. The word Rush is in red.
Mm-hmm.
A couple red songs.
Yeah.
We'll discuss one of them tonight. But all right, let's talk about the music. So, Donna, why don't you go ahead first with Afterimage?
Well, before I do, I want to kind of put a myth to rest, because I love a good myth, and I'll bet you do too. The title of the album, Grace Under Pressure, is supposed to come from something that Ernest Hemingway said. Now, we all know that Neil was a reader. There was nothing the man didn't read, okay? But I used to teach English and studied English literature and, have a master's in it and blah, blah, blah. But I don't think he ever said courage is grace under pressure. All I've ever been able to find is he said guts is grace under pressure. Years later, about 5 years after he wrote, from what I can gather, he wrote a letter to the famous author F. Scott Fitzgerald, where he said guts is grace under pressure. And his friend, Dorothy Parker, was writing about it for the New Yorker magazine, and she changed it to courage is grace under pressure. So the original was guts. Now, so what, Donna? But yeah, I think it's a very interesting example of a lot of the quotes that are out there are not original quotes. There's somebody said them or somebody quoted them, and sometimes somebody misquoted them. One thing is true, Neil loved Ernest Hemingway. He read Ernest Hemingway faithfully, particularly the whole outdoorsman thing. And that's going to lead me into my song here, because if we're talking Afterimage, we have to talk about the biographical nature of the song. Now, before we even get to the part about suddenly you were gone from all the lives you left your mark upon, which everyone, when Neil passed, was like that right there, that. Except, as we all know, the song was written about an actual person in Neil's life, a guy named Robbie Whalen. And what a lot of people may not know, Robbie was only 31 when he died. That's it. He was 31 years old when he died in a car accident on his way to the studio, from what I can gather, in, I think, May of 1983. I found the obit online in one of the Montreal newspapers. I mean, what a shame. He had been working with so many great bands, and, you know, their studio was, it was gaining prominence. A lot of people were coming in there. And by the way, Ryan, I'm glad that you mentioned about the almost like the darkness with respect to the album, because this was their first album without Terry Brown, was it not? And they had worked with Terry Brown since forever. And the sense that I get from reading and from talking about it is they couldn't really find a producer they were happy with at that point. I mean, they settled on what, Henderson? But the sense I get was that it was kind of, need a producer, you know, no offense to him or anything like that, but that camaraderie, that link, that friendship, that ease of working with the person, I think that may have something to do with why it took so long for that album to get completed. Okay. That having been said, there are a lot of lines in this song that are specific to Neil's relationship with Robbie. At the time, Neil didn't want to talk about it. It was only years later that he finally was able to talk about it. But there's a line in there about skiing, you know, and the fact is that Robbie taught Neil how to ski. They did cross-country skiing. They'd ski to work sometimes. I mean, come on, it was Canada. I suppose they could have skated, but the fact is, everyone that I read with respect to Robbie, he had a joie de vivre. He had a love for life, which is in there. I learned your love for life. And that's actually an interesting line. I learned your love for life. You can take it to say, I learned about, like I watched your love for life and I was like, yeah. Or it could also mean I emulated your love for life. Okay. It's like you brought me out of a period of time when I was really serious. And you showed me that energy, that love of the outdoors, that love of skiing, that love of just doing whatever. And Alex said the same thing. Alex said Robbie was the kind of guy you just liked to be around him. Okay. We do have some quotes from Alex about him. And it was like, he was just a fun guy to be with. He loved life. And that shows up in the song. The thing about his joyfulness, okay? He was the kind of person who really appreciated being alive. And there's a line in here where Neil writes, I feel your presence. I remember. Years later, when Neil can finally talk about it, let me make sure I've got the quote right. He says that in the song, he's trying to talk about what is the image a person leaves, okay? After the person is gone, they may have touched different people's lives in so many different ways, and they may have affected people in so many different ways. And he said, like, that's what he meant when he was writing about the people you left your mark upon, because he said there wasn't just one. He said, we all enjoyed being around him. Alex said the same thing. We all enjoyed hanging with him. And when he was gone, we could feel his presence. In fact, Alex said it was a very difficult song for them to sing at that time because he wasn't there. And they wanted him to be there. They liked him. And I mean, yeah, he was like the second assistant engineer, but that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was he could brighten up a room. And there are some people that just, that's a real gift. If you can do something like that in people's lives, okay? So he talks about there's a line in here where Neil said later on that he was very puzzled that some people misinterpreted this line. I feel the way you would, tried to believe, but you know it's no good. This is something that just can't be understood. he said people took that line, some people, like he was being anti-religion, tried to believe, but it's just no good. He said he wasn't saying that belief is no good. He was saying belief didn't work for him. He really couldn't find an understanding of why somebody 31 years old, who was such a good guy, who everybody liked, why was he gone? And he said, like, no matter what answer people give you sometimes, it's just no good. It's just no good. So he said he wrote the song to honor Robbie, to remember who he was. And years later, here we are talking about this song, and not just talking about Robbie, but talking about Neil. Suddenly you were gone from all the lives you left your mark upon. May Neil rest in peace.
Donna, I have a question for the group. I feel the way you would. What is being said by, what is Neil relating by that?
I interpreted that when he says, I feel the way you would. It's like, I share your feelings. Okay. The way you look at life, I try to look at life like that now.
Okay.
Okay. I feel the way you, okay. And the thing about learning about his love for life, learning about having his presence there. And that's why he keeps repeating, I feel the way you would. Okay. It's like, you'd be pleased if you're looking down. Maybe you thought of me as kind of this really serious guy. I feel the way you would. I really benefited from knowing you. Just like, again, we all benefited from knowing Neil. Whether you knew him in person, like I had the privilege of doing, or whether you knew him through his music. There's a presence, there's an image that is left afterwards. And knowing that really changes you. So I think that's what he was referring to.
Gotcha. There's minimal lyrics in this song, but
Absolutely.
it gets such a powerful point across, and it's like.
And it's also interesting, Ryan, I'm glad you raised that. This isn't a ballad. You would have thought like, oh my God, a tribute to someone who died, cue the violins. It's not a ballad at all. I mean, it's up tempo. And I think, again, while it's not like a heavy metal thunder kind of song, I think the up tempo part is intentional. I think it's trying to say, we miss him. He influenced us, but we want to be joyful because that's how he would feel.
Because he was, yeah.
And I think too, with the up-tempo-ness, I think you can hear a little bit of anger in there too, that this happened. You know, I don't think it's an angry song per se, but I think you can hear it, like the intensity of it. There is that kind of like you mentioned, like, why did this happen to this person who was so young and vibrant?
Be understood. This is something that just can't be understood.
And even in the music too, there's an element, there's a tinge of anger too. What I was going to say was that opening, suddenly you were gone. That's just such a simple, but it's with anyone. I mean, my dad passed away a couple years ago. He was sick, so he knew it was coming. But even when I got the call, it was still sudden, you know, like a kick to the chest. And I think whenever we lose somebody, whether it's sudden or whether we know it's coming, it's like, oh my God. And that those two lines just sum it up so perfectly.
Oh yeah.
And that's what made him a great writer. He could be very cerebral, but then also be very minimal and get the point across. Just an unbelievable
I really
talent.
get what you're saying, John, with respect to the anger. It's not like anger. It's like the guy was 31. This is wrong on so many levels.
Exactly.
And the fact remains, and Alex said, we wanted to celebrate him. I mean, we've got his quotes, okay? So we really wanted to celebrate him with this song. And you can't celebrate somebody without looking at all of the aspects of their life. That's what Neil was talking about with the after image. Like, what is the image that is left? What do any of us leave? You know, the measure of a life, you know, what do any of us leave? It's a measure of love and respect. This is in many ways a song about love and respect, the way Robbie would have written it. It's kind of up tempo, it's kind of positive, and yet it has that like, I tried to believe, but it's just no good. This is something that can't be understood. Why is my mother gone? My mother was one of the saintliest people that ever lived. Okay, fine. Everybody says that about their mother. But if you met my mother, you would have been like, wow, she was a saint. Okay, she really was. And she died of cancer. And I can name you about 50 people that I think are just swine. And yet they're walking around, living their lives, blah, blah, blah. And so I think there was a little edge of that for Neil. I mean, here's a guy who taught me to ski. We'd sit around and, you know, you have a beer and just talk into the night and this and that. I remember you're joyful. And you're 31 years old and you're gone. What is up with that? And yet we want to honor him. And this is the best we can do.
Seems to me that sorry, just one of Neil's books. I can't remember which one. I think he talked briefly about Robbie, and I think he said, I could be wrong about this, that it was the first time in his life that he'd lost someone at such a young age. It wasn't like a grandparent or a great grandparent dying. It was someone, you know, close to the same age as him.
Yes.
And another just little bit of trivia note about Robbie Whelan. The band, another Canadian band, April Wine, they recorded an album called Animal Grace. Also at the studio, came out in 1984, and that album is dedicated to Robbie Whelan as well. So he obviously made an impression on, you know, there were a ton of musicians that came through. I mean, Asia, the Police.
Well, he was just working with Asia at the time of his death.
Yeah.
So so this was just, you know, tried to believe, but it just, you know, it's something that he understood.
Yeah. I just want to wrap.
Later on, Neil's going to have his own set of tragedies that can't be understood.
That's what I was just about to say. Yeah, this song took on new meanings throughout Rush's career, right? Robbie Whelan, Neil's tragedies, and then Neil too. Like, I mean, now Don, I don't know if you knew what was going on with Neil prior to his passing or not, but for us as kind of sort of for us as fans, I mean, like. So he passed on January 7th, right? And we didn't find out until the 10th. When we found out on the 10th, it was none of us knew what was going on. So it was so sudden. I mean, I remember getting the text. I remember getting the text from my buddy while I was at work. That and
it was
like
like
4 o'clock in the
phone
afternoon.
with a friend of mine from the industry, and it just like came across the Associated Press wire, and you know, ding, 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 ding.
What a song. What a song.
Simple and yet eloquent.
Yep, exactly. All right, so moving on here. So the song that I'm going to talk about is The Enemy Within. So, of course, this is part 1 of the Fear trilogy. It was a trilogy at the time. I think, you know, now they've added Freeze later on, and I think I still like to call it a trilogy because it's kind of the Rush thing to do. There's 4 songs, it's a trilogy anyways. All right, so a quote from Neil here. So the idea for this trilogy was suggested by an older man telling me that he didn't think life was ruled by love or reason or money or the pursuit of happiness, but by fear. This smart but cynical guy's position was that most people's actions are motivated by fear of being hungry, being hurt, being alone, being robbed, etc., and that people don't make choices based on hope that something good will happen, but in fear that something bad will happen. I reacted to this the way all of us tend to react to generalities. Well, I'm not like that. But then I started to think more about it, watching the way people around me behaved, and soon I realized that there was something to this viewpoint. So I sketched out the 3 theaters of fear: how fear works inside us, the enemy within, which I'm about to talk about, how fear is used against us, the weapon, and how fear feeds the mob mentality witch hunt. Neil did go on to say that this was the toughest of the 3 to write, which is why this was written last. So sequentially, of course, this came third, but it's the first of the trilogy. And I think this song as a whole is just about overcoming the one thing in your way on a day-to-day basis, and that is you being in your own way, right? You know, the fear that's inside you. And this song just deals with internal fears and thinking that something is there that really isn't, or thinking that something's going to happen that really isn't going to happen. It's almost like paranoia, right? So quite frankly, it is paranoia. Song opens with kind of a mysterious guitar part from Alex, and then Neil fills in, with his drum fills, where in Rush Visions, Bill, I think he pronounced his name Banasowitz, states how dexterous Neil really is. He's during one point in the chorus, he's playing the hi-hat with his left foot, kicks his foot over to the closest bass drum, throws in an accent, and then it's back to the hi-hat. On the next measure, he hits another accent on the clap trap in an odd time, and his left foot moves back and forth between three percussive instruments while his right foot plays the other double bass. His right hand rides the bell of a cymbal, and his left hand plays the snare with the drum fills thrown in to top it all off. It just shows, I think this song just goes to show like exactly what he said, just how agile Neil is with his drumming, and just a fantastic, musical song. I'll get into the lyrics in a second, but musically, the song is very upbeat and it's very bouncy, like ding 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 ding. When it actually deals with a fairly dark topic, which is kind of interesting. Song opens with things crawl in the darkness, that imagination spins, needles at your nerve ends crawl like spiders on your skin. It's this is kind of saying, your imagination's running wild and showing you things that aren't there. Perhaps I always interpreted the needles at your nerve ends crawl like spiders on your skin, like goosebumps. I always interpreted that as like goosebumps. Pounding in your temples and a surge of adrenaline, every muscle tense to fence the enemy within. This is kind of what happens when you become paranoid and you stand up to these fears that your brain has created, right? To the chorus, I'm not giving in to security under pressure. I'm not missing out on the promise of adventure. I'm not giving up on implausible dreams, experienced to extremes. This is just trying to conquer those fears. I think, as Neil generally provides a solution to the problem, and I think the chorus in this song is said solution to facing your internal fears. And then again with the paranoia, and as I'll do what Geddy does when he sings this part on the Grace Under Pressure live, suspicious looking stranger, as he does the little eye movement thing. I always love that. Flashes you a dangerous grin. Shadows across your window. Was it only trees in the wind? Again, I mean, the shadows across your window, or is someone there, or is it just, it's paranoia, right? Every breath a static charge, a tongue that tastes like tin, steely-eyed outside to hide the enemy within. I always interpreted the tongue that tastes like tin, like perhaps the character bit their tongue and it bloody, like again with the blood on the album cover, right? I mean, that's the tinny taste, blood. I don't know. That's kind of what I thought. But steely-eyed outside, this is kind of the expression that you're kind of maybe not physically portraying, but in your head portraying to face this enemy within, right? And then finally, one of the weirdest constructed sets of lyrics here at the end, when it comes to, I guess, from a punctuation perspective. There's commas, there's question marks, there's colons, there's exclamation points all over the place here. To you, is it movement or is it action? Is it contact or just reaction? And you, revolution or just resistance? Is it living or just existence? Yeah, you, takes a little more persistence to get up and go the distance. And I think this section is almost a recap of the song. It's almost like a recap of everything that was said prior. And I think, so is it living or just existence? I think it reminds me of Ghost, right? Is it living, or is it just, or does it just exist, right? It just exists there. It's not actually living. That's kind of, which, that again, that's a ghost really isn't going to harm you. It's just the fear, what's inside of you is, it's making it more of a bigger deal than it actually is. Kind of how I interpreted it. But at the end, it takes a little more persistence to get up and go the distance. It reminds me of the line in Marathon from Power Windows, first you need endurance, first you got to last. So I think that's revisited there. But yeah, I think just this whole song is, again, just really dealing with facing these internal fears and how it takes an extra bit of courage to kind of go up against those fears. So what do you guys think? What do you guys think of The Enemy Within?
I think it's oddly inspiring, for a song for an album that's kind of, we mentioned, kind of cold and kind of dark. And the song itself, like Marathon that you mentioned, kind of has like, it's an uplifting chorus. And you hear that, I think there's a men's chorus in the background, a choir, I should say. That song actually sounds inspiring. And this song kind of has that a darkness to it, but the lyrics, if you look at it that way, there is some inspiration there, like Resistance, Go the Distance. And I think it's pretty cool that, on this dark album is this song that has a dark sound to it, but it has some cool motivation stuff behind it. I kind of like it. I love the song actually, but I like that kind of that dichotomy.
And it's in the same position as Marathon. It's the last song on side one. And there's a couple of production tricks. First of all, like I know they wanted Steve Lillywhite and he blew them off at the last minute. So they got Peter Henderson. I think it's a great sounding album. I think the drums sound amazing on. Like I think they suffered for the art, but the art is really good. But the production tricks, I love, getting the pow 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 pounding in your temples. Like I love that part. And the sound, the same spot in the second verse, every breath a static charge. I love Neil's dun, 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 like that goes with that line, every breath a static charge. It's those little things that just, and I don't know if those would have always been in the arrangement or they just came later, said, hey, we need something here to accent. Again, like Neil said many times, the fact that he writes the lyrics, he knows when they're going to be sung and he can respond to them. Whereas, drummers that don't write lyrics, sometimes they don't even know what the lyrics are. So
that the thing you were talking about, John, and Ryan as well, with respect to dichotomies, I keep seeing this thread with respect to Robbie's passing. And I believe he was still alive for some of this record. And then all of a sudden, boom, he wasn't. But the thing about living versus existing, there are so many people who their life is just going through the motions. Whereas Robbie was about
That's a really good point.
Living every minute.
I didn't even think of that. That's a really good point.
Every now and then I make one.
Every now and then, always. No, but actually to that point too, like it's, for example, we'll take Neil, right? He's no longer living, but he still exists in that the body of work that he left behind is still there. And I think that's kind of,
yeah, and that's that after image too, no pun intended. The fact that his image is constantly a presence in people's lives. If you're 100%. A fan, you feel like Neil is there for you. And it's like, yeah, you miss him, but his lyrics speak to you.
And this song has no guitar solo either, and I don't think it was necessary. One thing to point out, we didn't touch on that in Afterimage, which has a pretty sweet guitar solo, really fits that song. But this one doesn't. Don't really think it was necessary though, because this.
Here again, they're always doing something different. Okay,
right.
We have talked
it's
about
all calculated.
Humpty Rush albums now already, and in every single one of them, it's like, wow, this cut isn't like this one, and this one isn't like that one. John, you were right, and we've said this many times. These guys never mailed it in. Just when you thought you knew what they were up to, they're up to something different. Even within the record, maybe an album has, one cut with a guitar solo. Maybe another one doesn't. Maybe there's Neil doing the drum solo. Maybe there isn't one.
Yep. All right. I'm going to turn it over to John by saying both The Enemy Within and the song he's going to talk about, Kid Gloves, are in fact the only two songs on this record where the song title is actually contained within the actually sung within the lyrics itself. So a little bit of trivia there. So John, take it away. Kid Gloves.
Okay, well, let me cut to the chase, pun intended. this is my favorite Rush song. And it's not because, people think, oh, because it's a deep cut, it's a geek cut. No, I love this song. If I gave you a top 10, there'd be plenty of subdivisions in there and Spirit of Radio and all the known by hearters. But I just love this song. This album introduced me to Rush. It was my gateway. And this song was the first song I kind of hooked onto. Because I think I was 15 when I first heard this album. And a lot of it was kind of like, what is this? Because I grew up on glam metal, which I still love, but it was nothing like that. And I'm like, what is this stuff? And then this song with the guitars and stuff kind of got me, and I was obsessed ever since. But I love the opening guitar lick to this song. Kind of has like almost like a Genesis follow you, follow me kind of thing going on. But what I love about this song is, of course, the lyrics. And I've read a few different things and opinions, and you mentioned Steve Lillywhite, and I think Alex Lexon I saw online. He mentioned that this song is in response to the anger they felt when Steve Lillywhite kind of left them high and dry to go work with U2. And you read the lyrics, and it's kind of something that Neil does in a lot of his songs. It's almost like there's the young person in like the first verse, and then the wiser person in the second verse. Like in the first verse, call up blind frustration, call up blind man's bluff, call each other names, your voice is rude, your voice is rough. That's an argument, kind of like a blow by blow. Then you learn the lesson that it's cool to be so tough. So it's almost like you're being tough because that's how, hey, I'm a guy, I'm a man, I'm a person. You get in my face and I get back in yours. And call up blind frustration, call each other names. When you apologize for something after an argument, what do you say? I didn't mean that. I was angry. That wasn't me. That was the anger talking, which is kind of a lame excuse when you think about it. And then in the second verse, it goes, anger got bare knuckles, anger play the fool, anger wear a crown of thorns, reverse the golden rule. That to me is someone saying they know that anger, especially towards somebody else at times, can be counterproductive. It's got bare knuckles. It can hurt. Even if you don't mean it, it can hurt. Anger, play the fool, reverse the golden rule of do unto others. And then you learn that it's tough to be so cool. So now, as you get older, the challenge maybe is being that cooler head of being the person that says, kind of like what you said, Donna, why are we fighting about this stuff? Let's just let it go. Life's too short. And let's have a beer somewhere and hash this out like two adults. And I'll be honest, now that I'm a parent, I have a 9-year-old son who, if you saw me kind of like mouthing something to him, that's what I was singing to him earlier. This song has new relevance to me as a parent because Alex had said this song's about rolling with the punches. And that's kind of what parenthood is in the sense of rolling with the punches of, having an 8, 9-year-old kid and handling with kid gloves, kind of remembering what the world looked like through their eyes. That's what this song means to me. The point about it's cool to be so tough. Sometimes like when your kid says something, he's trying to be like the tough kid in school that he was trying to emulate. And you got to kind of see the world through his eyes and be a little more understanding of that. But that's kind of what this song means to me. And two, I think this song really is, I know the common theme. This song to me really personifies grace under pressure. Because this song is about cooler heads prevailing, let go of the anger, drop the gloves, let's talk this out. Let's not say something stupid and then say, oh, that wasn't me. That was my anger talk. So, and I love the sound of the song. I think it's a great song musically. Upset they never played it live when I was there. I know they played it at the Radio City Music Hall stint they did before they recorded Grace Under Pressure, but that version's actually very different. I found it on YouTube, and they're kind of like a verse is missing. It sounds a lot different than the recorded version on Grace Under Pressure. But yeah, I love this song. I love how it's not, like Afterimage and stuff is the lyrics are pretty concrete. There's a little more abstract with these lyrics. I think it's a little more debatable with these lyrics, and I just love the sound and tone of the song, and will always be my favorite Rush song.
Is anger wear a crown of thorns a reference to the Bible and to Jesus? Is that? Do you think that's what?
Yeah, I mean,
it was a punishment, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like if you're angry, you're punishing yourself. And, as far as reverse the golden rule, it's like saying, yeah, I realize you're supposed to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, but I don't care. I'm going to hurt people. I don't, but I'm going to hurt them because I'm angry.
But
That's how I
also-
enter.
But also, if you're looking at the Bible verse with the crown of thorns, that was meant by Pontius Pilate to humiliate him and to make him suffer. And if he was angry, he never showed it. He never gave into it. He never gave into the desire to like lash out or anything like that. And sometimes, as you said, Tim, with respect to anger being a punishment on yourself, it's also hurting others. And sometimes you have to just forgive.
One thing I wanted to say was this has apparently Alex Lifeson's second favorite guitar solo that he ever wrote on it.
Very quirky.
Yeah, I wanted to read the quote from him. So he says, that song is from my Grace Under Pressure album. What I like about that solo is it's the opposite of Limelight. It's got a hip, kind of slinky attitude, a little goofy humor. When I play it, I feel like a certain confidence, also like a prankster, which is not the way I am in real life. What's funny about it, too, is that it has a plot to it, and I only realized that after I recorded it for the first time. I never have a plot in mind when I'm recording solos. I always just kind of wing them. The Kid Gloves solo guided me. It's like it knew where it wanted to be, and I just had to allow myself to follow. So it's just such a like on such a dark album, Kid Gloves. It's a whole different perspective on life, I think, right? Like as John was saying, and I think the solo, Alex just goes way off the board with how different the solo was from anything else he did at the time, and I can see why he likes it because it's just so different. But anything else group wants to say about Kid Gloves? Awesome job, John. All right, Tim, down there seeing red. Let's talk about red lenses.
Talk about abstract lyrics.
Yeah.
One of the things I think is cool about, and it's interesting, is that on the lyric sleeve in the record, there are several passages in this song that are in red. Like the song titles are all in red, but there are several parts here that are in red. And the CD and cassette aren't like that. And maybe the remastered ones are. But Neil has said that this, I'm assuming it's kind of the same attitude he had when he would later write Anagram for Mongo. It's a word games. And he mentions Jabberwocky, which is Lewis Carroll, I believe. And it's, if you've read Jabberwocky, it's like, it makes no sense at all. There's made up words, slivey toves, twas brillig and all of that. But this is just different plays on words, alliteration, some funny rhymes. One of my favorites is, and the truth is often bitter, left unsaid. Not better left unsaid, but bitter. And not only left unsaid, but it's bitter too. The Kid Gloves and Red Lenses, I think, do provide a little bit of from the heaviness thematically of the album, even though I don't think they're all that lightweight either. I think Red Lenses was a little bit of I think I read a quote with Getty where he's saying that that album just took forever to finish recording, and they had such a hard time getting it out that they wanted to let loose on a tune. And there's lots of that. There's lots of cool little bass licks, and just when you think Neil's done, he's just like he'll go into some almost a humorous sounding drum fill, and and one of my favorite lines, we've got Mars in the horizon, says the National Midnight Star, and then a group of people, it's true.
Yeah.
And the National Midnight Star was, I believe, a reference to SCTV. And of course, SCTV, they mined SCTV for humor and references a lot.
And it
I
later
don't-
became like the newsletter for Rush fans in
That's right.
like the late
That's
80s.
right.
Yeah.
And it's there's only a couple of Rush songs that I can think of that start right in with a vocal.
Yep.
You know, Geddy sings "I See Red," and the whole band comes in on "Red." And the only other song I can think of that starts off with just Geddy is "Scars," where he goes "Hey," and then then the song kicks in. I've always gotten I don't like to say I've gotten a kick out of the song, but I get a kick out of this song. Grace Under Pressure is a special album for me because it wasn't my first Rush album, but it's the first album I heard from start to finish. So I know all of these songs very, very well. Here we go. Once again, Cold War. The Soviets are the blues, the Reds. Like, is he saying, the Soviets are giving me the blues right now? Because they're generally referred to as the Reds.
Okay. Yeah.
Pain that is burning and the rain that is the pain that is learning and the rain that is burning. Is he talking about acid rain again?
Acid rain.
Like just an early warning? Because that was it was Cold War, it was the financial situation and it was the environment. That was a lot of what was in the news in 1983. I vaguely remember. But it's very, very interesting. It's very bass heavy. Geddy drives this song. And then it's got the light part where it stops up. Like it does provide a little bit of lightness, but
Is that synth or is that a xylophone or does anyone know what that is?
that almost sounds like it might be like a marimba.
It sounds like a
it might be Neil doing that.
That's what I thought.
Of course, by this time, synthesizers could recreate those sounds. I don't know. Did they ever do this song live?
Every song on this record was played live. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
But I don't think they did it after this tour, did they?
They did not. I don't. No, I don't think they did. Could be wrong, but it definitely wasn't done outside the 80s.
I really enjoy it. There might be more lyrics in this song than say Afterimage, but there aren't a lot of different words. It's a lot of uses of the similar words, and Neil does that a lot. You think they're just repeating what he said before. Not exactly. Right. Read the lyrics. You got to read the lyrics. It's not exactly the thing he said before. And if it doesn't sound like I'm making any sense, it's because I don't think the song is meant to make much sense.
Yeah, I mean, the title on the lyric sheet too
is in red.
But it's also in lowercase. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Whereas everything else is all the other song titles are red, but they're all uppercase. I just
they come back to red, like in Distant Early Warning, red alert. I mean,
red sector A
thing with the concern about nuclear acid rain. This is the worried song,
Yeah. What a perfect time to be talking about this album as to what's going on the other side of the world. Yeah. Right
Rush
now.
songs are always relevant.
They're
always.
timeless. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just love all the references to things that are red in this song, right? The color of your heartbeat, a rising summer sun, the battle lost or won. Either way, it's a bloody battle, right?
Bloody
yeah. There's a couple other ones here that are really good. Mars, we have Mars on the horizon.
The
red planet. A pair of dancing shoes. I would assume probably likely red, right? Mercury is rising. I believe the planet Mercury is red, and like Mercury isn't
Mercury in a thermometer.
In a thermometer. That's what I was about to say. Yep. But the other one that I like is, the joke that people used to say or sometimes say, what's black and white and red all over a newspaper, right?
Yeah.
That's you see black and white and I see red at the last. Not blue, and then in parentheses, but to me, like what you were saying, Tim, that it's kind of like just a funny song, like it like kind of just a quirky song, and it seems like Neil's literally referencing that joke at the end of the lyrics, which I always found cool. This song, I was reading someplace a while ago. I mean, I'm sure the articles you can probably find it pretty easily, but someone quoted this as like the deepest Rush cut, like the deepest of deep cuts for Rush. And it could be, yeah. I mean, it's a pretty deep cut. So
But
that's
it
what-
has
Getty-
it has puns in
Yeah.
puns all over the
I
place.
see
Yeah.
red must be something I read. You know.
Yep.
It's, you know, and then there's a line that's like thinking about the overhead, the underfed, but later it's not listed in the lyrics, but later on doesn't Getty sing the underread?
Sure sounds like it.
He changed it around, and he's having fun with the vocal. Not
Absolutely.
blue. And then towards the end, he's like, think red. Like it's almost as if we got to have fun in the studio once this time around.
Yeah.
What I
This
thought
was to get
about-
all their yah-yahs out, which is a quote.
And this could be like totally off the wall here, but the thing about red, not blue, I kept thinking about David Bowie's Space Odyssey. Planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing I can
Yeah.
do. I mean, Neil loved David Bowie. Okay. And there were a lot of songs from the classic rock period that were influences. And the whole thing about the planet, and there's a thread throughout this album, I repeat, where they're just worried about what's happening around them. And I really think it's a presence on the record.
Yeah. But then there's a resignation when he goes, still, go ahead.
So,
It's actually a lot of fun the more you dive into it.
okay, yeah, I just thought of something. And there's probably no correlation here, but this just came to mind because of what I read in Hussheim's book, where he talks about that, which is over my shoulder. The original artwork is blue, and then it came to be more red. So, red, not blue. Like,
That's possible too.
Like,
That's possible too.
like this is what Hussheim, I guess, wanted it to be, and then this is the tour book, but this is what like came to be at the beginning, and then they started printing it with the album that has more red and not blue. Anyways, just something I thought of. But
Anything's possible with these guys.
yes, just a really fun deep cut. But anything else group wants to say about Grace Under Pressure and how awesome of a Rush record this is?
It's pretty great.
Go listen
Pretty
to
great.
it.
Go listen to it. Yes. All right. So those watching, please feel free to leave your thoughts about Grace Under Pressure in the comments. If there's on Rush Deep Dive, we all choose, a deep cut. So we're not hitting the hit songs, just to kind of reiterate that we mentioned at the beginning of the series. But, if there's other songs you want to talk about, feel free to leave it in the comments, and we'll continue to discuss in the comments with you all. So thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you on the next one, where we'll be talking about 1982 Signals. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody.